Good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for Tuesday, October 19th, 2021. It's 9:02 a.m. My name is Ty Mentor, Chair of the Board. We have Commissioner Carolina Mejia through our Zoom. We have County Manager Ramiro Chavez and Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell in the boardroom, and Commissioner Edwards to be joining us just here shortly. We have a live stream through our Thurston County YouTube channel. This is a 3-hour work session, and we'll have a break about halfway through, roughly 10:25. So COVID-19 update is the first item on this morning's agenda, so we'll go straight to Director of Public Health and Social Services, Shelley Slaughter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today is day 622 of Thurston County's COVID-19 emergency response. To date in Thurston County, there have been 19,516 confirmed cases of COVID-19. This is from the latest available data we have yesterday from Washington State Department of Health. There have been 629 new cases in the last week, and that is a slight decline from the prior week, so that is encouraging news. We are at 474.6 on the governor's risk assessment dashboard, our case rate over the last 2 weeks, which has gone down as well. Still very high, but definitely good news. 216 Thurston County residents have died associated with COVID-19, and two new deaths occurred in this last week. 1,243 Thurston County residents have been hospitalized, with 7 new hospitalizations occurring in the last week. Our hospital capacity is currently stable and closer to normal levels, which is still extremely high capacity. We have 50 COVID-19 patients hospitalized at this time in our Thurston County hospitals, which actually has gone up since last week, and 29 of those patients are on ventilators. There have been 92 congregate care outbreaks to date, with 15 that our team is currently investigating and 4 new ones that have occurred in the last week. We do not have test positivity rates to share with you. We don't expect to have that till after October 31st when the state system goes back online. However, there is widely available COVID-19 testing in our community, and today, as always, our amazing community-based testing team will be at Rochester Organization of Families from 10 to 1 tomorrow in the city of Lacey, Thursday at Union Gospel Mission, and Friday at Evergreen State College. There are many other places in the community that have testing available. I encourage people to check out our website for up-to-date information on where you can get a COVID-19 test. Very important if you're exposed or symptomatic of COVID-19. Our vaccinations have gone up in Thurston County. There have been 350,279 doses administered to date by Thurston County vaccine providers, including Thurston County Public Health. For Thurston County residents that have initiated at least 1 dose in a series, 61.4% have been vaccinated with at least 1 dose. 56.8% of our total population is considered fully vaccinated. In the 16 and over category, 72.8% have initiated at least 1 dose, and 67.4% are fully vaccinated. Among those 12 and up who are eligible for the vaccine, 71.5% have initiated at least 1 dose, and 66.1% of 12 and over are fully vaccinated. We are currently offering boosters for those eligible with the Pfizer vaccine, and do expect that Moderna and Johnson & Johnson boosters will be authorized potentially in the next couple of weeks. We are also anticipating pediatric vaccines to be authorized for those ages 5 to 12 in early November, and making plans for that. And I will stop there and answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Mejia?
Yes, I heard a very interesting question at Thurston Thrives yesterday, and I thought maybe the public would like to know. And it's regards to the booster shots, Shelley, and can people combine booster shots with, like a Johnson & Johnson, could they get a Pfizer booster?
We know that is under consideration at this time by the FDA, but we don't have any final information on that, and it hasn't been authorized at this time. But it may very well be in the future.
Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards, anything?
Robin's got something.
Okay, Robin.
Didn't I see you waving?
No.
Who was
Me,
waving?
I was trying to get this.
Oh, okay. Somebody behind Robin was waving. Sorry about that. No, I don't have any questions this
No, she
morning.
was texting me.
County Manager, anything?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Shelley.
Thank you so much.
Let's go to item 2, homeless strategies update. Tom Webster, Keely Marino. Keely, good morning.
Hi. Good morning. Keely Marinell with Public Health and Social Services, here to give you a really brief report today. Of course, starting off the report with where we're at with rental assistance. With Community Action Council has served 2,793 households, about 60% of which is at or below 30% area median income. So serving some of our households that are in most need of rental assistance. They've spent over $19,471,000 in rental assistance and about $92,000 in utility assistance. CYS holding steady with 99 households served for households between the ages of 18 and 24 that has spent $784,000 in rental assistance at this time. Other than that, we are moving forward with our conversations and plans for addressing parking needs along Ensign Road, having many meetings and being thoughtful in our approach. And beyond that, that's pretty much my report for today.
Commissioner Mejia, any questions for Keely?
No questions.
Commissioner Edwards.
Keely, did you have anybody check on that new homeless camp starting over at the exit of 101?
I did, and they weren't able to find it.
They weren't able to find it?
No, and there's also an existing camp that it might be part of called Percival Creek. So as far as they drove all around 101 and they couldn't find a new one. So I'm thinking that it's attached to the Percival Creek camp.
Well, all they have to do is look for all the garbage along the side of the road, and it's right on 101, just
Okay.
before you take the exit to the courthouse coming from Olympia. On your right-hand side, look up along the fence. Typical junkyard looking operation. I would hope somebody, I can't hardly believe they can't find it. Maybe
Well, if it is,
eye exam, well, to go along with their job.
Percival Creek is on the rotation of camps that are routinely reached out to by the city of Olympia and the outreach community. They are not a part of our scattered site pilot program, however.
Well, that's fine, but see what you can find out about the camp that is starting on the freeway. It's right up against the cyclone fence. You'll see it if you open, somebody will see it, okay?
Okay, thank you, Keely. Item 3 this morning is to review the draft agenda of this afternoon's board meeting, which will be called to order at 2 p.m. We'll have a pledge of allegiance to be led by Commissioner Mejia. We'll look at the draft agenda and board meeting minutes from October 12th. The next thing will be a presentation from the auditor regarding a proclamation for Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Thank you, Commissioners. I believe the county auditor, Mary Hall, will be in attendance this afternoon. I'm not sure if he's going to join us via Zoom or in person, but it's related for you to consider proclaiming October 2021 Cybersecurity Awareness Month here in Thurston County. And I believe the proclamation is attached to you.
Okay, assume there's no comments from the board looking, nope, on that one. We have a Timberland Regional Library update, annual update from Executive Director Cheryl Haywood.
Cheryl Hayward is going to be addressing the board this afternoon on her annual, or it is biannual, update of the regional Timberland Regional Library System. She will provide you with some of the successes and accomplishments of this year, as well as some of the upcoming work in 2022 the Timberland Regional Library is planning to do. And Amy, she's going to join us via Zoom or in person? Zoom? Okay. Thank you.
Any questions on the library update?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, the public will have the opportunity to address the board. The county manager can report on any follow-up items. Anything we need to know, Ramiro?
I don't have any specific following items. I do have, maybe you received public testimony from some members of the community who have provided feedback and letter support related to requesting a public hearing on the Black Lake Special Use District. I responded earlier in the week to some of those members, and I stated that perhaps the earliest that we can have a public hearing will be in early January, considering there's limited board meetings for the remainder of the year. There's a lot of public hearings associated with the budget. So we will be coordinating a public hearing in January as early as possible. And one of the elements that we need to do is to develop a communication piece that we can send to the members of the special use district related to this purpose and intent of this public hearing. So you may receive some public testimony this afternoon that perhaps that may not be meeting the expectations of the timeline. So that's all I have for you.
Commissioner Mejia, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
This is the petition that requests that the board dissolve the Black Lake Special District without a vote of the people, just unilaterally dissolve the district. Am I remembering that correctly?
That is the intent, but according to the review of the request and checking with the legal counsel, I think the board is required to have a public hearing based on the number of citizens that have submitted that request for you. And again, at this point, I am not prepared to have an action as such. I think the first step will be for you to hold a public hearing as a requirement based on the state law. And then based on the public testimony, the board needs to have a conversation, what will be the next steps.
Okay.
And I think it is a good point of clarification, and maybe for the members of the public. The special use district was formed by the vote of those individuals involved and the citizens involved within the boundaries of the district through an election. So.
Well, yeah, I was just clarifying because Black Lake's come up, in about 4 or 5 different contexts almost every week. So I wanted folks to be clear what we're addressing here. Okay, consent items. We have 4. 3A is a human resources item pertaining to a resolution setting benefit contributions for 2022.
Yeah, thank you, commissioners. On September 30th, Human Resources provided you a briefing where the HR staff suggested as to what would be the baseline for benefits for county employees. This particular resolution is needed for you to formally approve the baseline, since the open enrollment will begin on November 1st, 2021, and will go through the end of November of 2021. This is a yearly opportunity for employees to seek any changes related to the health benefits, all the benefits that we provide, and make any adjustments on family and everything else. So for your considerations, for you to set that this afternoon.
Questions on this item, commissioners?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. 3B is a reappointment to the Agricultural Advisory Committee.
Yeah, for your consideration, Commissioner, to discuss this particular appointment, and this is for Mr. Joe Hanna to the Agricultural Advisory Committee as a farmer member. And the term will be from October 31st, 2021 through October 31st, 2023.
Questions on this item?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Item 3C is an appointment to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Commissioners. We also discussed this particular appointment, and for your considerations to appoint Ms. Peggy Jo Zimmerman to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee as a potential applicant fund member for the term of October 1st, 2021, and will run until October 1st, 2024.
And this is a particular seat for a recipient of the funds because this person sits on the fair board, was my recollection.
That is correct, and this particular appointment is replacing
And should,
Ms. Ann Shipley. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from the board?
No, sir.
no, sir.
Okay, financial services voucher list is 3D. Any questions from commissioners on that?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Then we're off to item 4A, which is an interagency agreement with the Administrative Office of the Courts for Blake decision reimbursement.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. I give you a heads up last week that this item will be in front of you this week. And this related to the Blake decision back in February 25th, 2021. The Supreme Court rendered an opinion in related to State versus Blake. And what it does is change as to how the possession and control of substance statute changes on some individuals. It has a retroactive approach to this particular impact. So we have been working with the Office of Administrative of the Courts to see how the amount of money that was set aside from the state legislature should be distributed to address the impacts of the Blake decision. This particular contract for you is to consider entering into a local agreement with the Administrative of the Courts to receive $2,766,700 for extraordinary judicial, prosecutorial, and defense-related costs, and an additional $901,000 related to LFO's reimbursement. As you may recall, this doesn't even scratch the surface as to how much we need in terms of the impacts of the Blake decision. We have developed a high-level estimate that at this point, the impact on processing those cases will be as high as $5 million, and the LFO reimbursement will be probably as high as $6 million when this thing is said and done. And again, this agreement is an attempt to just start addressing the financial impacts. And at this point, I will probably give the floor to Robin. You'd like to elaborate a little more on this request?
Well, I think you covered it quite well. I will add, though, that I've worked with all of the offices and departments involved because there are heavy reporting requirements in this contract, but they have all said that they will be able to provide the data necessary to get the money. So everybody's reviewed it, legal has signed off on it, and it's the best we can do at this time.
This is revenue coming in, right?
Yep.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Although it's not enough, it's coming
It's
in.
not enough, but everything helps.
Okay.
All the state has provided at this point.
Commissioner Mejia, anything?
No, sir.
All right. I got leaf blowers outside my window, so I keep playing with the mute and getting it wrong. So apologize about that. Then we can go to 4B, setting a public hearing for Commissioner District boundary line adjustments.
Thank you, Commissioners. As a result of the 2020 census, and that goes every 10 years when we have the census, there is a requirement to make sure the Board of County Commissioner districts are balanced based on the new population. We provided a briefing last week as to how we, staff is proposing for you to achieve that objective. And the objective, it meets several criteria as we presented to you earlier in the year. One is the main objective is to balance the population among the 3 districts. That presentation that we provided to you achieves that objective. The second objective was to ensure that we move entire precincts from one district to another to balance that population as well. And that objective was also met. And the third objective was to make sure that the no sitting commissioners, both Board of County Commissioners as well as Port of Olympia commissioners will not be outseated by the changes of the boundaries. And that objective has also been met. You requested last week to go ahead and submit an AIS for you to consider setting a public hearing. This particular item is for you to consider setting a public hearing for Tuesday, November 9th, 2021 at 3 in the afternoon. Or soon thereafter for you to receive public testimony related to this particular proposal. Also, I reported last week that with your concurrence and your knowledge of the proposed changes, I will be reaching out to the Port of Olympia Commission as well as the Public Utility District Commission. Yesterday at 1:30 in the afternoon, I presented this proposal to the Port of Olympia Commission. There were no questions related to, there were some questions related to the proposal, but overall they were very grateful. The county has taken the lead on this particular proposal, and I believe they're going to be accepting that on their own legislative terms. Next week, on Tuesday the 26th, I have an appointment in front of the PUD Commission, and I will present the same presentation that I did yesterday and see where it goes from there. That's all I have.
Commissioner Mejia,
No questions.
Commissioner Edwards.
One quick question.
Yes, sir.
What about fire commission districts and school boards and things like that? Are they all covered as well? Or?
No, that's a little bit different. This particular action does not affect any of those junior districts.
Okay, thank you.
County Manager, you may have said this, but does the review also include the 4 port candidates as well?
Yes, thank you. I reported yesterday that for the Port of Olympia Commission, we added an additional objective that any sitting Port of Olympia Commissioner, as well as any candidates who are running for those offices, will not be outseated by the proposal, and we also accomplished that objective.
Okay, yeah. I thought that was true, but I wanted to confirm since we have 2 elections going on with brand new candidates.
Thank you.
Okay, let's look at then 5A, Community Planning and Economic Development, to proposal to set a public hearing for renewal of Ordinance 15792.
Yeah, for your consideration, Commissioners, the current ordinance, emergency housing ordinance, is scheduled to be expired on December 9, 2021. And this is going back to when the board first initially enacted this particular housing emergency ordinance. That was June 25th, 2019. And since it has been renewed every 6 months, and this is for your considerations to renew for another 6 months. On the parallel track, not related to this particular action, the board added to the docket to consider making this a permanent resolution, and that might be coming for you next year. And this particular action is for you to consider setting a public hearing for November 30th, 2021 at 3 in the afternoon, where you receive public testimony related to the option of extending this interim regulations beyond December 9, 2021. Questions?
Questions from the board?
No.
No, sir.
Okay. Next item is 6A from the coroner's office, a resolution for purchase of portable x-ray machine.
Thank you, Commissioners. This item has a little bit of history. Late last year, the board authorized the coroner's office to go ahead and purchase an X-ray machine. And the estimated cost at that point was about $250,000. The county coroner, Gary Warnock, went ahead and started looking for options as to what will be the right equipment, and determined that the first option was a little bit too big for the office space that he currently has available in his building. So during through the due diligence, the county coroner's office and Gary Warnock found X-ray equipment that actually fits within, as he called, his current real estate space. So this particular proposal is for you to authorize the coroner's office to go ahead and purchase this equipment, X-ray equipment, for $62,595 plus tax. And Gary's here to answer any questions.
Good morning, everybody. Any questions for me?
Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Nope. You're off the hook, Gary. Thank you.
All right, thanks, commissioners. We appreciate it, and it's one great step moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, on we go. 7A, Emergency Services, Joint Funding Agreement with U.S. Department of Interior for Water Resource Investigations.
This particular item for your consideration is a renewal of some of a coordination that we have with the Department of Interior, the U.S. Geological Survey, to maintain stream flow, discharge, and precipitation gauges on the Deschutes and Escucunchac rivers. This particular proposal includes a $21,416. It goes from October 1st, 2021 through September 30, 2022. The $21,416 will come from the emergency services budget of $15,116 and from CPED budget from $5,000. Those items have been included on their respective budgets, and again, this is a renewal of this gauges in the partnership with the USGS. And Kurt Harding is here to answer any questions.
Questions for Kurt? Commissioner Mejia?
No questions for Kurt. Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
No. Kurt, anything we need to know?
The only thing I would add is county manager did a great job with the summary, but there was a question about the Chehalis flood basin. We actually have found some USGS information for you, and we're collecting that. We should have that together this week and forward that to you.
Okay, thank you. Then let's look at Public Health 8A, Amendment 1 for DSHS EJAZ Access Agreement.
Thank you, Commissioners. Currently, the Thurston County Department of Health has a contract with the Department of Social and Health Services with the state, and this is to access a web-based electronic jobs automated system, also known as EJAZ. This particular application allows public health social services, particularly the Nurse Family Partnership, to receive referrals via EJAZ for home visiting services. The information obtained is used for the purpose of referrals, tracking and monitoring caseloads, program policies, and client participation in the Work First program. This particular agreement does not have a dollar amount. It allows the extension of for us to receive those services from the state. And this amendment includes 2 additional years from November 1st, 2021, and it will go through October 31st, 2023. And again, there's no financial impacts, no financial elements on this particular agreement. Gretchen Fowler is here, if you have any questions.
Questions for Gretchen? Commissioner Mejia?
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards?
I guess I'd just ask for clarification for the viewers out there. This is the Department of Social and Health Services agreement number that is given. Is that something for our Department of Social and Health Services, or is that the state agreement? It just I know what it is, but it doesn't say state in there at all. And somewhere, the public should know that we're just getting we're signing an agreement with the state of Washington, I guess.
So you like, I'm sorry, you like to add the word state before the department?
Well, I don't know if that's what it is. Is that it? It's the State Department of Social and Health Services?
Yes.
And it's an agreement with Thurston County's Social and Health Services, isn't that?
Correct.
I'm fine with it. I'm just, for the clarification of the public, that's the only reason
Yeah, we can modify the action as you deem appropriate.
is that okay with my seatmates?
Yeah, so it would be moved to approve the amendment 1 to the State Department of Social and Health Services.
Yeah, it's just such a minor technicality that somewhere down the road.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll make that change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you.
8B is a proposal to set a public hearing for the 2020 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. Jacinda Stelchis is here.
Thank you, Commissioners. You reviewed this item last week. The 2020 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, also known as CAPER, for Thurston County is an annual summary report explaining how federal community development grant programs, CDBG, and home investment partnership programs, also known as HOME, not related to the other HOME funds that you're considering, were expended during the program year 2020. That program year, actually, the performance of these contracts from September 1st, 2020 through August 31st, 2021. And under HUD regulations, is requires the legislative authority to set a public hearing in order for you to provide public testimony related to this performance and evaluation report before we have to submit this report to HUD. In this particular proposal for you is to set the public hearing for November 23rd, 2021 at 3 in the afternoon. And after that, we will ask the board to accept, depending on the public testimony, to accept the report. And then we will go ahead and submit this to HUD, and that will meet the necessary timelines associated with this reporting. Jacinta, anything else?
I know you covered it well. Actually, the only thing I will add is that there is also a public comment period that will run approximately October 29th through November 30th, which is another opportunity for the public to comment on this report to HUD.
And how can they submit those public comments, Jacinda?
Thank you for that reminder. They can submit them to myself at my email address, jacinda.stelchis at co.thurston.wa.us. And that is also, we will have a draft report, draft keeper report available. My contact information is also in that report, that email address, as well as my phone number.
Thank you.
Also, Jacinda, I'm sorry.
Oh.
On the public notice, will give the public the opportunity to know where they can find the report and how they can submit comments, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Edwards, do you have anything?
No, sir.
Okay, me neither. Thank you, Jacinda. Okay, Public Works time. We've got a number of items. 9A is interlocal agreement with Intercity Transit for transit signal priority.
You reviewed this item last week, Commissioners, and this particular proposal is to work with, have an agreement with Intercity Transit where they will provide the county up to $25,000 per year for a 5-year period for us to operate and add what we call this preemption equipment on the traffic signals that we have here in the county. And the traffic signals preemption allows for buses who also will be outfitted with equipment to trigger the signal when they approach the intersection that will give them a green light. So avoiding any idling on the intersections while they wait to move forward through traffic. This is I believe, an excellent opportunity to continue to reduce our carbon footprint in coordination with the intercity transit in their fleet. Matt Anselman is here to add additional perspective on this.
County manager summarized it very well. The only thing I would add is that Intercity Transit has executed similar ILAs with the cities of Tumwater, Lacey, and Olympia as well.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Any questions for Matt? Commissioner Mejia?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is item 9B, resolution for temporary closure of Country Club Road Northwest at Green Cove Creek. I remember we reviewed this last week. We've got Marcus Storvik from Public Works, Associate Civil Engineer. County Manager.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, in fact, you did review this item, and this is an emergency project. It just came up. This particular culvert along Country Club Road over Green Cove Creek is somewhat collapsing and needs of immediate repair. This particular request is for you to consider having a road closure between October 23rd and November 30th, 2021 to expedite the temporary repairs that we need to do on this culvert. It can help us go through until we can make a permanent solution. The permanent solution for this particular culvert is included in your agenda today. Later on, the county engineer will walk you through as to what we need to do beyond the temporary repairs that we need to do in this particular case. This is a loop road. It doesn't require much of detour signs, and I believe 3 property owners may be directly affected by this detour. Is that correct, Marcus?
Yeah, that is correct.
So, any questions on this?
Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.
Item 9C, set a public hearing for update to Thurston County water and sewer rates.
Thank you, Commissioners. Public Works provided a briefing back in June 2021 on the proposed rate changes for water and sewer on some of the utilities the county manages. At that time, the board authorized Public Works to go ahead and have public outreach and making sure that all the ratepayers will be informed of this particular increase. That has occurred, I believe, and also the Boston Harbor and Thomason utility advisory committees have been briefed and on the recommended adjustments, and I believe they're in support of this particular proposal. This item for you is for you to consider setting a public hearing for November 9th. 2021 at 5 in the afternoon, soon thereafter, for you to receive public testimony before you can consider adopting changes to the rates on sewer water utilities. Tim Wilson is here to add additional perspective or answer any questions.
Anything up front, Tim?
Good morning, Commissioners. No, I don't have anything to add at this time.
Commissioner Mejia?
No questions, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
No questions.
Okay.
I have
Robin's got
Robin has
just a comment. So any changes in revenue are required to be part of a revenue public hearing related to the budget, which we have scheduled for December 8th. So it's okay for you to have this public hearing on this November 9th, but we will do it again, and this will be part of the revenue hearing on December 8th, and then you would not adopt these rates until you adopt the budget.
Good point.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Let's go to item 9D. Proposal to set a public hearing for rate increases for Long Lake Management District and Lake Lawrence Management District.
Thank you, Commissioners. The resolutions in which both Lake Management Districts, Long Lake and Lake Lawrence, includes up to a 5% annual increase. They will allow to cover inflationary factors as well as additional activities within those Lake Management Districts. The board approved 2020 rates increases for 2022 through Ordinance 15963 and 15965 respectively. This particular proposal is for you to consider taking public testimony for the 2023 rate adjustments. And for Lone Lake is 5%, and also for Lawrence Lake is also 5% for 2023. Both lake management districts are in concurrence with this particular proposal. And again, this item for you is to set the public hearing November 9, 2021 at 5 in the afternoon. And this will apply similarly to what Robin stated earlier on the sewer and water rates.
Commissioner Mejia,
No question.
Commissioner Edwards?
Did I hear you say this was going to take effect in 2023?
2023.
And we're having the hearing for it now?
Because we're preparing the biennial budget, 2022,
Okay.
2023.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good clarification. Thank you. Okay, then thank you, Tim. Item 10A is a resolution extending declaration of local emergency.
Yeah, Commissioner, you did not review this item last week. This is a brand new item for you. And this is for you to consider extending the current emergency declaration related to the COVID-19 emergency through June 30, 2022. It came to my attention last week that the current emergency declaration ends on October 31st, 2021, and I don't have any other Board of County Commissioners meetings until then. So this is why I apologize to bring this item without you reviewing last week, that I believe is an important item for you to consider approving this afternoon. As we continue to deal with the emergency at this point, this particular emergency will allow us to continue to access federal funds, particularly FEMA, and as well, it will allow us to continue to respond to the emergency related to testing and additional vaccinations related to, there's all the expenses that comes with it. This particular emergency has been extremely beneficial for us to respond to the emergency. Any questions?
My question
Commissioner
was,
Mejia,
thank you. My question was going to be in regards to funding, if we need those to access funding, and it looks like it's needed, so no questions.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, as long as it's required, I guess, to continue funding. But at some point, we're going to have to get away from this emergency and get back to a regular life, I'm hoping, so.
That is also my hope, Commissioner.
Okay.
And, hopefully by before June 30th, we'll be in a different position, and that's my fingers crossed.
Thank you.
So one of the big drivers, though, is access to the FEMA funding. And you may recall that we are getting 100% of our expenses for vaccination efforts refunded through FEMA. And we need this to get that. So as long as we're pushing out vaccinations, we need this order.
They've got a pretty tight grip on us.
They do, in that respect, yes, they do. But
Well,
it's totally worth
and
it.
as of recent, some counties have decided not to extend the emergency resolution on their own counties, and they're facing the possibility of not receiving federal funds. And those are they have a grip on us, and those are the consequences, really. Yeah, it was just on the news this morning, I believe.
Yeah.
Power to push.
Yep, battle we don't need to have.
Maybe this is a Robin question. Since you brought up FEMA funding, this is slightly off topic, but I know that last spring there was a stream of FEMA funding that the president had made. There was an executive order and citizen group said, why aren't you accessing this money? And our response to that citizen group was, we're still working through the parameters and what we can do with it. And I'm wondering, did that particular funding stream ever get resolved or utilized or anything? What's the update on that?
So there was a letter that Dr. Abdamalik needed to sign, and I believe she has done so. And then it's related to housing, right? And you
It's,
may know more about that.
Yes, and I believe what you're recalling, Commissioner Messer, is access to temporary housing. And we have done that so far in order for us to be eligible for isolation and quarantine costs. And that is not related to permanent housing. That had to be clear under FEMA requirements. And that's what we can be utilizing this to get reimbursed eventually for isolation and quarantine costs that we have been incurring. And those are isolation and quarantine costs for those individuals who are required to be isolated or quarantined. They do not have an option to isolate in their own places.
We are getting reimbursed for isolation and quarantine that the county is providing, which is what the group was suggesting we spend that particular FEMA money on. So I would say yes, that it's been resolved.
Yeah, and I think what you're recalling, Commissioner Messer, was a little bit of misunderstanding of the direction of to how FEMA funds are working. At some point at the beginning of this conversation, there was an understanding there's a grant that we needed to access through FEMA, and never was a grant because FEMA doesn't work on those parameters. FEMA works related to reimbursement basis. So when we got the word of this opportunity, which is 100% reimbursement of those activities, then we embark on making sure that we, the county, is aligned and meet all the requirements for us to properly be reimbursed. So I think that's proposal you're recalling. It was members of the public, they had an understanding that it was a grant, a FEMA grant. It was not such grant. FEMA doesn't work on those parameters. Did I answer your question, sir?
I think so. If I'm remembering it right, I think it might have been directly what you're saying about quarantine and isolation, but I feel like there was some suggestion, again, from potentially misinformed public that we should be acquiring a hotel or something and we would be able to get reimbursed for that through this stream versus the other streams we were looking at. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that's what we were in the moment responding to, a call from the public. Why aren't you doing that? And it had just come through. I mean, the president, I believe within it was a couple, 3 weeks after there'd been something about that, and we were still figuring out if that was a possibility. Sounds like maybe not.
And no, because my understanding again is not for permanent housing, because FEMA operates under a current emergency, and at some point the emergency will end. So on a permanent basis, that will not really apply. And that's how we have been working through the many different requirements that FEMA has in order for the county to access this basis, again, on a reimbursement basis.
Okay, anything else from the board on item 10A?
No, sir.
Okay, then we'll have our standing items for the board to make reports and the county manager to review our schedule. And that will be fairly lengthy agenda for this afternoon. Next is the review of next week's agenda, which the meeting is canceled, so we won't be doing that. And then we also, correct me if I'm wrong, we also will not be having an agenda setting next Tuesday either, correct?
No, sir. And the reason as to why the meeting is canceled is the board will embark on deliberations of the 2022-2023 biennial budgets beginning Thursday of this week. And we're hoping for you to have final preliminary decisions on the budget by Thursday, the 28th of October. So the cancellation of the meetings will allow the board enough time to go through the deliberations they need to do based on the presentations that you've received in the last 2 weeks from the offices and departments related to the requests. So I just want to make sure that we, as staff, would like to give the board enough ample time for you to have discussions, ask questions, and at some point moving forward and for you to consider making preliminary decisions on the budget. Those preliminary decisions on the budget will be assembled in a budget book, and that will be published for the public to start providing feedback, leading to the public hearings that are scheduled for you in the first week of December. Rhonda, I believe it's the 6th and 7th.
The 6th and 7th.
Sixth one, yeah, and that is required by law that you need to have those public hearings on the budget the first week in December. And soon after that, we'll engage the board with another series of conversations based on the public testimony that we may receive. And at that point, we will make final decisions leading to the final approval of the budget for 2022-2023. I believe it's scheduled for December 18th.
December 17th.
17th, thank you. And that will, at that point, the board may drop the mic.
So, okay, thank you for that overview. That's important. But I guess my question was about whether or not, so on the November 2nd board meeting, we're going to be reviewing that agenda for the first time that morning. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. What I will do is probably circulate that agenda prior to that meeting to individual board members. If you have any questions, let me know, and we can probably answer those questions on when we review that agenda for that month.
The audio coming out of the boardroom is pretty bad all of a sudden.
Do you hear me? I can speak a little louder.
It's not that you're not loud enough. It's just, it's cutting in and out, in and out, in and out.
The beauty of the Zoom environment.
I could enter the boardroom, but we'd still have the problem of the public would not be able to hear us very well.
Elizabeth or Marcus, can you have a sound check from your end? Or Scott?
I would definitely concur with Commissioner Menzer. It's the same from my end too.
Okay, so it's coming from the.
Same from here, same for me too.
It's not the room, it's the Zoom. The room sounds fine on live stream, it's the Zoom.
So it seems like the Zoom has a little hiccup, so hopefully is there anything that I missed that can repeat, Commissioner?
I can, with a great strain, I can follow what you're saying, but it's going to be difficult to keep that concentration level up for the next hour and a half or 2 hours. And the public, I don't think is going to be.
Would you consider maybe taking a break so we can relaunch the Zoom meeting and then we can start again?
That sounds good because we're at let's just, we'll pick up with item 5. We'll just take 5 minutes here and see if we can get it going right at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, and for the staff members, it will be the same Zoom. We're just going to close the Zoom meeting during the break and we'll relaunch it again, see if that will help.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, great. We're back after a quick tech break here, and it's 10:04 a.m. We're picking up with item 5 on our agenda setting work session agenda. Proclamations and awards. Clerk of the Board, Amy Davis.
Good morning. The proclamation for Cybersecurity Awareness Month is attached. This is usually jointly accepted by the Auditor's Office and Information Technology. Auditor Hall is unavailable today, but Dennis will still be on. And that is all for proclamations.
Any questions from the board?
No, sir.
No.
Let's go to item 6, advisory boards and commissions.
Yeah, we have one application again for the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, or LTAC, and that is from Annette Pitts, CEO of Experience Olympia, as a potential fund applicant member. If appointed, Annette would fill seat 5, previously filled by Shauna Stewart. If there are no concerns, we'd like to include this item on the consent agenda of today's meeting, since next week's meeting is canceled. If there are any questions or concerns, though, we can circle back and address those.
Commissioner Mejia,
I have no concerns.
Commissioner Edwards.
The only thing I'd point out is, I don't know if the staff contact is the right information.
Yes, sorry, this is the old one-pager from the committee. So now that we've had most of the seats reappointed or appointed, staff will update this.
Okay. That's
We'll get a new one.
The interested parties, okay.
Okay, very good. Let's go to PIO check-in.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Menzer, if I may, I have one more informational item.
Yeah,
Just to share.
please.
Okay, regarding the current use advisory committee. So I have met with staff of the current use advisory committee, which is housed in the assessor's office. This committee advises the assessor on the assessment of farm and agricultural land, open space, and timberland. It is a 5-member committee that meets once a year. All terms on the current roster have expired, and staff is looking to give the committee somewhat of a revamp. So we are working on communication strategies and outreach, which include social media posts, including this committee in the Friday 5 newsletter, and also an email recruitment to a distribution list the assessor's office has, specifically targeting property owners of farms in Thurston County. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any, but just wanted to give you a heads up prior to posts and newsletters going out.
Commissioner Mejia,
Sounds good.
Okay.
Commissioner Edwards. Amy, I don't recall ever hearing of this advisory committee. Current use, is it, you said it advises the assessor about agriculture or?
Yes, on rates and assessments of farm and ag land.
So it was one we looked over where there was some confusion because it's called current use agricultural advisory, and then we also have an advisory committee. So they're 2 separate ones, Commissioner Menzer, and I believe the current people who sit on that have been on there for
Quite some time, and all have termed out. All are expired.
But they're still serving?
Yes, under the county code, they serve until a reappointment is finalized.
So you're going to advertise, but let's say nobody applies, then we'll just reappoint the 5 people that are still on it, or are some of them trying to get off?
No one has indicated whether or not they'd like to reapply or stay on. We were going to open the reappointment process to them as well and include their applications with the others that we receive.
Is this committee required by law?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we need to have it staffed. It's not a choice.
Correct.
Sounds okay.
Yes.
Okay, well that I guess makes sense. Is that it for item 6, advisory boards and commissions, Amy?
Yes, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to item 7, PIO check-in.
Good
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. The public informational meeting for the Safe Parking Project at Martin Way and Carpenter Road has been rescheduled for Thursday, November 4th from 6 to 7 p.m. Tomorrow we'll be announcing this via legal notice in the Olympian, a news release to our local media. So if any local media are listening right now, please hold off until the news release comes out. It will have more information. Updates to the Regional Housing Council webpage, and we'll be sending a letter to the neighboring property and business owners. This is going to be a virtual only meeting, and we are asking the public to submit their questions and comments to me in advance of the meeting, where panelists will answer the questions. All of this information will be available on the Regional Housing Council webpage. I will put something on the homepage as well. So if people are interested in submitting comments, that will be made available. Yesterday, Keely Marino, myself, and Martha with TC Media went to the site to do a short introductory video for the meeting and post the public notice signs at the site. It actually worked out really well because I was able to connect with 2 of the nearby business owners and provide them with a little additional information, as well as provide my contact information if they have any more questions. So it was nice to actually be at the site for a minute and have them come and talk to us. So pending any questions, that's what I have.
Commissioner Mejia,
No questions.
Commissioner Edwards.
No, sir.
This might be a Ramiro question. I was told on Friday at actually you were there too, Ramiro, the 3 cities meeting, that Lacey was going to reach out to have sort of a more, I think, council to council meeting about this or something, is what I understood from the mayor. Have you heard anything more about that?
No, I have not received anything from the city, but I believe the request from Mayor Ryder was to have the mayor and the administrator, as well as the county manager and the chair to have a meeting. It was not necessarily council to council, it was just the mayor from the city of Olympia and Jay Burney, the mayor from the city of Lacey, Mayor Ryder, and Spence, user, and myself to have what he requested a face-to-face meeting. So I will see if Scott Spence is coordinating that request.
Okay, yeah, it wasn't entirely clear, so I was just looking for some clarification. Thank you. Okay, next is item 8. Thank you, Megan. Briefing and public hearing decisions pending.
I don't have any pending decisions for you this morning, sir.
Okay. Item 9 is commissioner items, and we have several. Item 1 is Sheriff's Office Administrative Staff Salary Study Discussion/Direction.
I don't see HR staff here yet, but I see Public Works for item number 2, which is the Country Club Culvert replacement.
Okay, we'll come back to 9.1. Let's go to 9.2.
I see HR staff coming in. Hold on. Yeah, Debbie Bergman.
Okay, Debbie, good morning. We're up to the Sheriff's Office Administrative Staff Study item.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Debbie Brookman. I'm the Labor Relations Specialist. I work in Human Resources.
You should be able to share your screen if you like to go through the PowerPoint. The board has a copy of that today.
Okay, excellent. Let me, this is my first PowerPoint presentation on Zoom, so bear with me, but I think we've got it figured out.
Yeah, I think we got it.
Okay. Oops. Start at the first slide.
Yep.
All right. Let's see here. Let me get this stuff out of the way. Everything's working fine except my display is, I need to sort of sort it out a little bit. Didn't come up quite the way I expected. All right. Well, I am here to brief you on a small classification and wage study that we conducted on behalf of our Sheriff's Office administrative staff. I'm going to cover the process that we followed, explain the findings, as well as Human Resources recommendation. On November 2nd, you will see an AIS from Human Resources on your agenda requesting that the results of this study be implemented, and that will include both the updates to the job classifications that we reviewed, as well as the wage recommendations that that are associated with those updates. So that will all happen on November 2nd. At least that is the plan. And if need be, I can talk to you about what options you might have. Romero can probably also share that with you, as well as Maria Aponte, the HR director. So no decisions today. This is just an overview of the study and inform you so that when you see that agenda item on November 2nd, you'll know what we're here for or why it's there. All right. So the project was conducted under the purview of a memorandum of understanding that we reached with the Sheriff's Office and the Deputy Sheriff's Association on behalf of the administrative support staff to conduct a classification and compensation review. And we agreed to the MOU in order to support the Sheriff's Office ability to retain and hire highly qualified talent to fulfill the important role that the association's administrative staff do for the Sheriff's Office. We also were looking to fill a gap in the larger countywide classification and compensation review that's going to be conducted by a consultant. These positions are covered by the civil service rules, and the civil service positions were intended to be excluded from the larger study due to their somewhat unique process and nature for changing. But as you'll see, we are actually going to recommend that at least 2 of the classifications be reviewed by the consultant, but I'll get into that in a moment. We started work in March of this year, and we concluded our work in July. So it was a several-month process. All right, so the next slide is going to talk about, stage 1. And this was the classification review. These classifications in the Administrative Services Association were significantly out of date. There are actually 6 classifications in the group. We reviewed 5 of the 6th. The 6th position is the accounting manager, and that was reviewed when it was created in 2018. And so unlike the other classifications, the accounting manager had been reviewed relatively recently, but the other 5 were, as I mentioned, significantly out of date. We have some goals anytime we do a classification review. We want to update the language so that it's a more accurate reflection of the work actually being performed. And because we did this as a collaborative effort, we were able to, really rely on the expert resources that we have in the Sheriff's Office. The people actually doing the work were very involved in this stage of the classification and market study. And we got input not just from staff, not just from representatives from the association, but also from the Sheriff's Command staff, the employees and supervisors who weren't necessarily there as union representatives, and the Civil Service Commissioner. So it was, or examiner, I'm sorry. So it was definitely a joint effort for this phase. As we updated each classification, we then sent them to the Civil Service Commission, where they've been reviewed and approved. So as I said, the goals: update the language, make sure it's accurate, an accurate reflection of the current work being done, ensure that any essential functions, qualifications, working conditions are all up to date and accurate. And then we use that information to make an accurate comparison in the second stage, which is the wage study. So this part was less collaborative, sort of by necessity and nature. Talking about wages is always a little bit sensitive, and collaboration isn't 100% possible, but we did seek and receive significant input from the association and the Sheriff's Office. They truly served as subject matter experts for this phase. We followed the Thurston County compensation methodology, which means we've reviewed several different counties and cities in the state of Washington as comparison employers that we feel compete for similarly qualified candidates. We made our final recommendations that you'll see today based on objective consideration of the best available evidence that came out of this interactive process. I'm going to talk just a little bit more about how we do these comparisons because I think it's important. When we look at those other jurisdictions, we're looking for what we call matches. And by matches, we mean other jobs that have similar purposes, similar essential functions, similar levels of supervisory authority, that require similar skills, credentials, or experience, have, if not exactly the same, at least similar levels of independence and judgment and impact. And we also look for jobs that have similar economic working conditions. So if we're looking at an overtime eligible position, we try to find other overtime eligible positions. If we're looking at an at-will position, we try to find other at-will positions when we can. Those are all important compensation criteria that we look to find matches when we're doing this kind of work. Once we have those matches, we take the salaries of all of the jurisdictions and their matches, and we average them, and then we compare them against our salary to determine if we're competitive in our labor market. Absent other factors, a salary within 5% of that average is generally considered competitive. Other factors do occasionally play a role. That can be anything from internal wage comparisons and equity with other job classifications that have similar levels of responsibility and do similar work. It can be compression. And by compression, I just mean the difference between what a supervisor for that work makes versus a line employee. You don't want those two salaries to be too close together. Ability to fill positions, ability to retain employees. We especially don't want to lose employees solely due to wage considerations if it can be avoided. Before I go on to the next slide, I just want to say we look for these matches and we were able to find really good matches for 3 of the 5 classifications. For the other 2, we weren't able to find good matches. We do have some recommendations, but you'll see this when I get into the details. So at completion of the salary study, just an overview here, we bring the findings to you as the Board of County Commissioners for consideration. As I mentioned before, this will be on your consent agenda for November 2nd. And if approved, the salary adjustments will be effective January 1st, 2022, in accordance with the Memorandum of Understanding and applied, per our rules. All right, so the next slide is a summary of the findings, and I'm going to give you some details as well, but just as a summary, looking at this chart, you'll see the legal assistant supervisor. The next column is the number of employees in the sheriff's office that are in that job classification, and then their pay range. The supervisors are in pay range 11, and the numbers following that are the minimum, midpoint, and maximum salary for a range 11 position. The compensation at the midpoint and compensation at the maximum columns show how our wage compares to the average of the matches that we were able to find in the relevant job market. And you'll see for the legal assistant supervisor at both the midpoint and the maximum point, they were significantly behind. And we are recommending that they be increased by 2 pay ranges. For the Bureau staff assistant and the legal assistant, we really, really struggled to find matches. And for both of those, because we weren't able to come up with a good set of reliable data, we are recommending that the countywide, the consultant conducting the countywide wage and compensation, classification and compensation study, take a second look at those and see if maybe they can come up with some recommendations. And I'll talk a little bit more about the challenges that we faced with those 2 classifications when I get to the detail slide. For financial operations assistant, we were able to find a good set of data. They are behind. And you'll see from this slide, they're within that 5% that I mentioned before, but we are still recommending an increase. And that's because of another factor, which I'll talk about when we get to those details. And then again, for the crime analyst, same thing. We're making a recommendation for a 2-range increase. Okay, let me talk a little bit about some of the details. I am not a PowerPoint professional here, so my slide probably looks a little busy. My apologies for that. But this is what the Excel spreadsheet looks like when we plug all the data in based on our matches. And you'll see for the legal assistant supervisor, these are our relevant jurisdictions. You know, lots of counties, Washington State, and then our 3 local cities. For most of these jurisdictions, we were able to find a good match for the supervisory function for the body of work performed in the sheriff's office. Not in every case, but in most cases, we're able to find a really good match. And so that's where we get the data, and that's where we get the averages. And again, this is our salary here for Thurston County. And in every level, we are behind for the supervisory function. We don't have an internal comparison for this one, so you don't see any data down here. But based solely on the external comparison, we are recommending that the pay range be increased to range 13, which is a 10% increase. Moving on to Bureau Staff Assistant, this was one where we really struggled to find appropriate matches that all of the parties at the table agreed were appropriate matches. We did find one in the city of Olympia. For the others, the ultimate findings are that we couldn't find matches. And based on this, we can't recommend any sort of salary adjustment for the Bureau Staff Assistant. As I mentioned before, we are recommending that the consultant include this in their study, just to ensure consistency and accuracy. I mean, maybe they can look at it in a different way, or just come at it with a different perspective that would result in us having reliable data. Regardless of what the outcome is, it would be nice to have reliable data for this job classification. Legal assistant, again, this is another one where we were able to find some matches, but we weren't able to find that full set of 5 that we really like to have have a reliable set of data upon which to make a recommendation. The data points that we did find do not show that this classification is behind. We are recommending that the consultant take another look at this. There are some significant structural differences which really drove our inability to find matches between how our sheriff's office structures the work and how other jurisdictions that we look at structure this work. There's nothing wrong with the way our sheriff's office does it. It's just that it makes a wage study very challenging because other jurisdictions are using, in many cases at least, specialized job classifications to accomplish some of the work that we are using a single job classification to accomplish. And some of those specialized classifications pay at a higher rate. The other thing that we do, which is different from what a lot of other jurisdictions do, is we have a single classification of accomplishing this entire body of work versus layers. For example, a lot of jurisdictions have like a sheriff's assistant 1, a sheriff's assistant 2, maybe even a sheriff's assistant 3, accomplishing the same body of work. So again, just very challenging to find matches when our structure is so significantly different. All right, moving on to the financial operations assistant. The financial operations assistant, we have 4 of these. We were able to find matches with relative ease. This is a commonly used, commonly performed body of work, commonly performed by a specialized position. So you'll see, I think we found a match in every county except for Spokane. Based on the average of all of those matches, we're within the 5%, as I mentioned on the summary slide. But this is one classification where another factor came into play, and that is our internal comparison. We have a similar classification that's used elsewhere in the county, Accounting Assistant 3. It does pay more, and the work is very similar. The level of responsibility is very similar. And if you look at the Accounting Assistant 3 compared to the Sheriff's Legal or Financial Operations Assistants, you'll see that there's a pay discrepancy there that adds up to 6.4% at the top of the range. Taking the internal and the external comparison together, we are recommending that the Financial Operations Assistant be moved up 1 pay range to range 9. And the last classification I'm going to talk about is our crime analyst position. We weren't able to find a match in every jurisdiction. The cities in particular City of Olympia does have one, but the cities in particular tend not to have a designated position performing this role. But looking at the jurisdictions that do have a crime analyst, we found that our position was significantly behind, especially at the top there. Because of the way our wage tables are structured, we can't recommend, say, a 9.2% increase. It has to be in increments of 5%. So we're recommending a 10% increase for this position, rounding up a little bit. I think we have had some challenges filling this highly technical position in the past. So hopefully that will help if you adopt that recommendation. All right, the last slide covers the costs. This isn't a really expensive proposition, but there are some costs associated with it. So for each classification, this is the cost of moving the range as recommended by Human Resources. You'll notice on here that the Sheriff's Executive Aide is also on this list. It is not a classification that this study included. However, the Sheriff's Management Pay Plan, the way that it's structured, it's tied to the positions in the Association's Administrative Support Staff Unit. So the way that language is currently written in the Sheriff's Management Pay Plan, it automatically results in the Sheriff's Executive Aide also getting a pay increase. So that is included in the costs, which total $57,592. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions you have. I can turn off my screen share unless you need me to go back to any of the slides.
Please go ahead and stop.
Okay, let's turn it off for now, and if we need to, we'll go back. Okay, Commissioner Mejia, we'll just start with you.
So I don't even know where to start, because this was something where I met with some of the staff, and they brought forth their concerns, and they're outlined in the sheriff's letter that he sent. So I'm gonna wait. Maybe other commissioners have better framed questions than I do at this time.
Commissioner Edwards.
Okay, so we're kind of, to encapsulate this, we're talking about within 5% keeps you competitive, I guess. And it looks like on all of these ranges, but specifically on the ones that were 9 and 11% minus, if we bring them up 10%, we're still behind. Is that right?
For the crime analyst, you'd be just slightly ahead of the average. For the supervisor, you would be just slightly behind the average.
And is there any reason, well, okay, in your discussions with these folks, was this all hunky-dory with everybody the way you're proposing it to us? Or have you got to that point yet?
Well, I think anytime you're talking about wages with a unionized group, they would like to see all of their members receive a raise. And that's unfortunately not what the evidence supports for Human Resources recommendation today.
Oh, okay. But still, it seems like with the 10% upgrade on a few of those that you explained, we're still going to be, well, I guess we would be 1%. Let's see, 1% above where we're 9 down, we'd end up 1%. Where we're 11% down, we'd end up down 1%. So one's up, one's down. But with all the work that you went through to put this all together, wouldn't it make sense to, I don't know, give them 13% or something if you want to bring them up to a market? You know, but did I hear you say something about you had to do it in 5% increments?
Just by virtue of the way the wage tables are structured, each pay range is 5% above the one below. So increment, when you reassign a range, you can raise it by increments of 5%. And we're really limited based on the wage table structure. All of the all of the salaries are linked together by percentages. And so it limits our ability to assign a salaries to exactly what the study findings would otherwise indicate.
But we still end up at 10%. We're still kind of medium or right at the bottom of the normal. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so I'll take the supervisor, for example, because that one at the top of the range, our data showed was 11.4% behind.
Okay.
By raising it 10%, it will still be 1.4% behind the average.
Right.
But that's within the 5% that the county's compensation methodology would consider competitive. So according to our methodology, that would put us on target. Even though it's not exactly at the market average or above the market average, it would still put us right on target.
How long did this process take you to go through this? It was quite a lengthy process, wasn't it?
It was. We spent a good deal of time rewriting the classifications and going through that part of the process. We didn't spend the entire time working on the wage study because we needed the classifications to be updated before we could start that work. But yeah, overall on the project, we probably spent a good, 4.5 to 5 months.
I guess what I'm trying to do is take advantage of all the effort that you put in with those groups and end up with something more than below average, I guess is the way to put it. I mean, I think that after all this time, it was quite a delay getting this thing going. So they've been running behind for quite a period of time. You've put all this work into it. Why not bump it up a little more? Because it's going to be a long time before we move and renew this again or review it again. So it seems like it would make sense to go on the higher side of that, especially because other jurisdictions are going to be going into other bargaining situations. And so almost immediately, we're going to be behind the 8 ball again, so to speak. So that's why I bring that issue up. I see the county manager's got to.
Yeah, the process that David described is the process that we consistently have applied for any classification when the board has reviewed. And within the 5% target, it has been practiced for many, many years. And there is nothing inconsistent about what Debbie has gone through this process with any other salary revisions they have practiced in the past. We're going to be embarking with a new consultant to help us develop a new process, and the board will be a part of that process as to how you would like to apply a consistent, and I like to emphasize the consistency of this. Obviously, the board has the latitude to set salaries to all positions as you see deem appropriate. But I will encourage the board to be consistent on the process, because as we have practiced in the past, the recommendation the HR has submitted to the board in terms of hitting that target of 5% within the range of the different studies, that's the consistency that we have practiced so far. So if I may, there is no really, HR has not deviated from that process at this point. And as Debbie stated, related to salary adjustments and union members, there is always the sensitive issue. The only thing that we can provide to you is a consistent approach. And the consistent approach has resulted in the recommendations you've heard today.
Okay, I'd just like to follow up on that no other group has been demonized like law enforcement has over the last couple of years. And we're trying to prevent, we want to retain those folks that we can, and we want to recruit, and we want to be in the ballpark when we're doing that. I hate to see us start off being under recognized or represented when it comes to average positions. So that's kind of where I'm initially at. I'll hear what my seatmates have to say, though.
I didn't have this information when I read the letter from the sheriff, but if I'm trying to cross match and figure out what the problem is, if there is a problem, it seems that the sheriff is taking issue with the contention that these two comparable, or these two classes that don't have adequate matches would then be postponed to the larger consultant study. Is that, am I reading? I guess I'm looking at Debbie because you're the expert and probably understand the details. Is that the essence? I mean, he makes some preliminary problems about the process, and that's, we're not addressing that today, but is that what he's upset about in this letter that we were all received?
I have a great deal of respect for our sheriff. I don't entirely understand where he's coming from with that letter, to be perfectly honest with you. For the legal assistants, because of the structural issues that I mentioned and the differences in how we structure that work compared to how many other jurisdictions structure that work, there are some things that I believe we should discuss during next round of contract negotiations related to compensation for example, employees that are performing exclusively public disclosure work. Should we be looking at compensating employees performing that work more? Should we be looking at a lead designation within that group to recognize that some legal assistants are operating perhaps at a different level than others? There is still more work to come. This wage study is not the end of the road or end of the story on what we might do to address compensation issues for our sheriff's administrative staff. I don't know if I can answer your question fully, Commissioner. I'm happy to take more questions and do better if that would help.
Maybe I can. I think that's probably what the sheriff's suggestion in issues on the two positions, the bureau staff assistant, the legal assistant. The recommendation is not to review their salaries. The difficulty is we couldn't find any comparables to make an objective suggestion to the board. So absent that, it will be somewhat arbitrary to determine whether it's 5%, 10%, 20%. So, and that is difficult, and staff is not in the position to provide those arbitrary recommendations to the board. And that's where we are on this matter. Those two positions are recommended to be studied as a whole. And the consultant that's going to be coming is going to help us to guide us through whether the jurisdictions that we usually use for comparables are adequate. So the consultant is going to provide an overall overview of everything that we do related to wage studies. Absent that report that is coming up next year for your consideration, it will be extremely difficult for staff to, without having the right comparables, to come up with the suggestions for you. Because again, that will be arbitrary from the staff point of view.
Let me just add one thing to that, Chair. I don't know, Debbie mentioned that she had a hard time finding comparables. And for whatever reason, I don't know the answer to that. But was it possibly because the sheriff has assigned duties to these individual positions that are maybe more than others do, kind of like, okay, you do your job and all other duties as assigned type of a thing, so you couldn't find anything? Or how did you come up with that problem, I guess? How do you analyze that?
So with the legal assistants, the difficulty finding comparisons really has to do with those structural differences. If we look at another jurisdiction that, for example, has 3 layers of I'll call them legal assistants in their jurisdiction, and we only have 1, do we compare to the lowest classification in the other jurisdiction, the middle classification, or the highest? When you really boil it down, there's no fair way to choose from the levels that the other jurisdiction is offering you as potential matches. But maybe there are some different methodologies that aren't contemplated in our methodology that would allow for some sort of reasonable comparison to take place. And I think that's what we're kind of hoping the consultant might provide some guidance for us on. There are also things I mentioned earlier that we could do to address our structure to make it a little closer to those other jurisdictions, such as compensating people that are providing specialized services. I don't think that it's because our sheriff's office is assigning different or higher level duties to his legal assistants compared to what other sheriff's offices, for example, are assigning to the employees that perform the same body of work. The body of work is very similar. It's just how we accomplish that body of work that was really where we ran into the challenges.
Okay, I guess I'm okay until I hear from my seatmate, I guess.
Okay, I'll get to Commissioner Mejia. I'm still going. So the sheriff seemed to specifically, though, call out the bureau staff assistant position, which is the one you had almost no comps for. And I guess I'm just wondering if anyone else here has any insight that more than I've heard about the statement that HR is working to separate this class, and I will not allow that to happen. This has created division amongst peers. I guess I'm struggling to understand. I mean, I can theoretically understand why, okay, you're getting a salary bump because you've got comps. This person, no comps, you got to wait. Okay, that's sure that person's not thrilled maybe if they think that it's going to result in a salary increase for them at some point down the line. But if there's the process requires, I think I understood you to say that the 5 matches that we seek to get that's a process that we apply across all studies, and that's kind of built into our consistent process. Is that right, Debbie?
That's correct.
Okay, so I would imagine, I'm just trying to think out loud here as I try to connect these dots. I'm imagining that this isn't the first time in this prior process that we might have employees within a certain office or department that some of them have appropriate number of matches and some don't, and it has to be addressed in some other way. I mean, it's got to be the case that sometimes there's not. I mean, I know I've heard about it I think it's the clerk's office, or I don't know, one of the offices. I know I've heard about this in other groups where there's a struggle to find the right, corresponding matches.
Yes, I think that's fair. The challenge that we ran into here is while it wasn't completely collaborative for the wage part, we did get significant input from the association and the sheriff's office. And part of the reason that we don't have matches, in my opinion, is based on a difference of opinion as to whether or not we should be looking at administrative support positions versus executive support positions. And because we weren't able to reach agreement on that aspect of it, I mean, we all agreed that there were many jurisdictions that all 3 parties agreed there were no matches. The handful of jurisdictions that were left over after that, we couldn't find anything that really made sense to everybody that was operating at the same level, wasn't at will, wasn't overtime exempt, and just really met the sort of the essential function of the bureau staff assistant. The bureau staff assistant is, I don't want to say it's unique, but it is definitely different in our sheriff's office than that kind of administrative support is structured elsewhere. So it does boil down to a structural issue as well. We've historically compared that job classification to things like administrative secretaries and things like that. With the rewrite of the classification, it reflected, I think, a little bit higher duties than had previously been the case in the classification. And that's really where we ran into the problem, because we couldn't rely on those old classification matches, but we couldn't really find new ones that were a good fit either. And again, the consultants with additional expertise in this area may be able to give us some guidance on how better to study that particular classification. The linkage, as you probably saw from the chart, if you recall, both the bureau staff assistant and the legal assistant supervisor are both currently assigned to range 11. They have not always been assigned to the same range, but they are currently both assigned to the same range. And while I can't speak with authority on what the sheriff is trying to say there, I think the concern may be that we would, under these recommendations, would now have the supervisor at range 13 while the Bureau staff assistant would still be at range 11.
Commissioner Mejia?
So my concern is if we leave these two positions until next year, I know that there's gonna be a timeline with how each office is going to get, reviewed by the contractor or, and so where would these two positions fall into? And would they be at the top of the list? Would they be at the bottom? Would they be in the middle?
That I don't think I have the answer to that question. I haven't been, Maria Aponte, our HR director, might be able to answer it. If not, we can certainly get back to you with that. I don't know that the classifications have been prioritized in the manner you're speaking to, but if they have been, we can get you an answer.
There's not any particular prioritization. When HR was conducting the internal study, that's when we had prioritized them. But by utilizing contracted services, they have a capacity to conduct a county-wide study. And what they do, initially they ask employees, what are you doing? How often do you do it? What's your level of authority, et cetera. So it's not about having groups that will go prior to others. What we may need to prioritize is if there are recommended pay increases because of the cost of that. So you would have to be able to budget. So we might have to prioritize a position where they're either difficult to fill or very specialized certifications. So no, it's not like they'll be left at the bottom or the top of a heap. It will be a county-wide initiative.
So with that, I'm still concerned in regards to the retention, especially, if the borough staff assistant and the legal assistant supervisor, they've been kind of at the same level. And then, the legal assistant supervisor are put up to a higher level, and the borough staff assistant they're kind of held down and they're told to wait. I'm just looking at what our job market is like right now. And when it comes to retention of employees and that outlook, and when it comes to hiring new employees, how difficult it's been for multiple offices across the county. And so my concern is just kind of that imbalance that it can create in the sheriff's office with maybe some turnover where, some of these either legal assistants or borough staff assistants decide to go somewhere else. So those are just my concerns, just at the top.
Okay, I think you said this at the beginning, but can you remind us what the next steps are on this whole situation?
Absolutely. On November 2nd, you will have a agenda item summary on this item asking the Board of County Commissioners to approve both the updated job classifications that have been approved by the Civil Service Commission and the associated recommended wage increases for the classifications where we're making such a recommendation. So you'll have opportunity on November 2nd to look at all of that and make a decision, adjust whatever you need to do.
Is there a comfort level with the job classifications with the groups? Or, I mean, Commissioner Edwards asked you up front, are the groups, kosher with this, or however you put it, but is separating the matches and the wage, if we just look at the updated classifications, were there disputed points there, or did there remain disputed points?
I don't believe so. The collaborative effort to do the classification rewrite was good work by all the parties involved. I don't think there's any controversy or dispute over the classification rewrites, at least none that I'm aware of.
Okay. Commissioner Edwards, I saw your hand.
Okay, so you're talking about a 10% bump for what, 3 groups? And nothing for 2? Is that what you're talking about? What would the difference in cost to us out of the general fund be if we went ahead and bumped those 2 that you don't have your comparable, you don't feel you have the right comparables, I guess is the best way to put it. If we put them up 5% right now, waiting the outcome of the person or the group that you're going to bring in for the review, what would that cost us if we
can bring that cost for the November 2nd, Debbie. Obviously, that requires a little bit of homework. I don't think we can provide that information to you right now, Commissioner. But also, I will encourage the board, obviously you have the latitude to set salaries to every single county employee classification. But I will encourage for you to be consistent, because the recruitment and rotation is not just an issue on the sheriff's office. It's across all the offices and departments. And the only thing that we can provide from the staff level is a consistent approach for you to consider salary adjustments. And I'm just going to strongly encourage you for the board to be consistent on everything that you do. Because as soon as you have the latitude, but also there will be other employees in other classifications, they will be expecting for you to do the same. So let's bring back this on November 2nd, Debbie, with additional information, Commissioner Edwards related, and at that point, the board will make a decision as to how you'd like to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Let's move along. Items 9.2 is Country Club Road Culvert Replacement. I see Scott Lindblom, County Engineer, was with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Is my audio coming through okay?
Yep, pretty good.
Wonderful, thank you. So thank you for your time this morning, and I was hoping to use this time to give you an update on an emerging issue or an emerging project we have coming up in Public Works. And my esteemed colleague, Marcus Storvik, will be advancing my slide. So Marcus, next slide, please. So Country Club Road, it's an important part of our road system that provides access for over 800 vehicles each day to allow people to get to and from their homes and workplaces. It's also a well-used, slow-speed road that lots of pedestrians use to walk in their neighborhood. Country Club Road, as you can see on the map, is just off of Cooper Point Road between Cooper Point and Biscay, north of 36th Avenue Northwest. The road itself crosses the Green Cove Creek, or goes through the Green Cove Creek watershed, which is a highly valued watershed in the northwest part of Thurston County, which is home to several species of I always get this mixed up, Andromenous and anadromous fish, including steelhead, chum, coho, sea run cutthroat, and some Chinook. Next slide, please, Marcus. So this is kind of a screenshot of Country Club Road in the area of where we have a large culvert, 5-foot diameter culvert, that carries Green Cove Creek. The culvert itself is just about in the middle of this picture at the bottom of a 50-foot tall embankment. And as I mentioned, it's a local road. The daily traffic is just over 800 vehicles per day. And as you can see, the area is extremely wooded, and just off the road on either side of the guardrails, it drops off fairly steeply to the bottom of the Green Cove Creek watershed canyon. Next slide, please, Marcus. Came to our attention recently, in fact, just last month, that the condition of the culvert itself has changed somewhat dramatically in the last 12 to 18 months since our last inspection. The photo on the right is the downstream end of the culvert. And as you can see, the culvert, it's about 5 feet diameter, and the downstream end and the upstream end are round like they should be. This culvert allows Green Cove Creek to pass beneath the road. But as you can see in the right picture, the picture's a little bit dark. The top of the culvert has actually collapsed about 12 inches. Again, that's in the last 12 to 18 months. We're concerned that should this collapsing of the culvert continue, it could put the integrity of the road at risk, which would also affect the safety of the traveling public. And furthermore, it would partially or fully block Green Cove Creek, resulting in impacts both upstream and downstream. In a sense, were the culvert to continue to collapse, it would create a large earthen dam with no outlet for the water as we enter the wettest months of the year. Next slide, please. So to address this, we're advancing two different fronts on this to address the issue in the short term, but also long term. In the short term, we're working toward an emergency repair of the culvert. This temporary repair will protect the public by protecting the integrity of the road while minimizing the risk to the creek itself. On a parallel track, we're beginning work on a permanent replacement of the existing culvert and this proposed temporary culvert. To install the interim repair, our process is really going to take about 4 weeks, but the good news is we've already started this by securing materials. Just yesterday, we did secure an emergency HPA, hydraulic project approval permit from Fish and Wildlife, which will allow us to work in the stream. We are working toward obtaining property access, as we'll be working on 3 different parcels owned by private property owners. We made contact with one, and we're making efforts to reach out to the other 2 property owners, but thus at this point have not been successful yet. We have a crane reserve to help us with the work. Subcontractors are ready to begin, and our crews are scheduled to begin this emergency repair work next Monday, October 25th. Certainly, with the winter being right around the corner, time is of the essence for us to complete this work. And with the rain coming up, should the start of the work be delayed by really 1 day, it could set the work back several weeks into the middle of November at the earliest, because materials and subcontractors are not available if we were to delay the work by just a couple days. As I mentioned, taking no action on this could put the road embankment and the road itself at risk. We do recognize this will be an inconvenience that will cause some residents some temporary access, some temporary delays getting to their homes, as they'll have to take a different route. Were this work not absolutely necessary, we would certainly wait till next summer. But unfortunately, it is something that requires our attention right away. To do this work and make the work itself safer for our crews and for the traveling public, Marcus Storbeck will be coming to you this afternoon to request a temporary road closure, which will help keep our crews safe and the safety of the traveling public protected. Once the work is done, we will reopen the road as quick as we can. There are some unknowns that we have that we are trying to plan for. We don't know the remaining lifespan of the culvert. We fully expect it to make it until we get our repair done next week. We do not know the weather impacts, as this work will be within the stream and around the stream. Heavy rains could affect our ability to get the work done in a timely manner. When I put this presentation together, we did not have all of our materials ready, but at this time, I believe we have everything we need to get going. And COVID impacts, we don't know what, if any, COVID impacts there will be. We are taking our precautions as we normally do. We expect those impacts will be minimal or avoided, but with COVID, I guess we really never know. Next slide, please, Marcus. And I'd like to walk you through, just describe to you a little bit what this temporary work will entail. Essentially, the work will involve inserting a smaller pipe within the existing 5-foot diameter pipe. Here's an example showing two pictures up above that county crews did on Flumerfelt Road just a few years back. In this case, the embankment on Country Club Road will be about 50 feet high, not the 5 to 8 feet high that you see in the photo here. But essentially the work will be quite similar. We'll be setting up erosion control and sediment control to make sure that our stream is protected. We'll be setting up a 125-ton crane on the road to help us reach down the distance to the bottom of the stream channel. This crane will take up most of the road, thus the reason for the temporary road closure. The crane will help lower a mini excavator out to clear out the channel and help push the pipe through the existing 5-foot pipe. All told, we'll be inserting about 175 feet of pipe, pushing that through the existing partially collapsed pipe. Once that pipe is through, we'll be installing seals on either end, both the upstream and downstream end of that space between the newly inserted pipe and the existing pipe. Once those are sealed, we'll be inserting or pumping grout from up on the road all the way down the embankment to pump it into that space between the two seals. What that grout will do is will help support the 50-foot high road embankment above the pipe. We expect that grouting to take about 3 days to complete. Once that work is done, we'll be installing logs and root wads at the downstream end of the culvert to really help protect the channel from erosion. Finally, please be assured our crews have done this work before, and we're working with a contractor that regularly does this work with the DOT on culvert repairs under the DOT freeways. Next slide, please, Marcus. So as I mentioned, we will be requesting the board approve a temporary road closure. This will help expedite construction. And you may notice in the closure, we are requesting a closure of several weeks, weather permitting, and if things go well, and I hate to jinx that, if things go well, we expect that work to be done sooner than the road closure. And be assured that as soon as the road is safe to open, we will do that. Emergency access will not be restricted from any homes. There will be no homes that will be blocked from their access. The area that will be requesting access is between two neighborhoods. The maximum travel delay to residents living north of the closure is about a 4-minute delay. In addition, we'll be having a communication plan to stakeholders such as residents, emergency responders, and any nearby businesses. And public notice will be given with appropriate signage consistent with RCW 4748020. And finally, notice of the closure will be published in one issue of the Olympian. Next slide, please, Marcus.
Can I have a question, Scott?
Yeah, please.
I'm sorry, I can't find when a road closure would be or for how long. Where is that? Did I miss it?
That's on your agenda today. Sorry, your proposal is, let me get to it. Is from October 23rd to November 30th.
To November 30th?
Yeah,
So 6 weeks?
October 23rd to
5
November
weeks.
30th, just 5 weeks.
And I should add, because we are entering the challenging wet month of November, this will provide us the most flexibility in case there are some delays. As I mentioned, the stream itself will be right in the middle of our work zone, and heavy rains could certainly affect our ability to get this work done in a timely manner. I do believe, again, if things go well, we should be able to get the work itself done in about 2 weeks. But I don't want to jinx that. I did look at the weather forecast, and it does call for rain next week, but at this point, we are still moving ahead with starting that work on Monday, the 25th of October.
That is correct. And to add to the county engineer's point, at the time of the AIS, we weren't sure on the exact start date, but it is confirmed, like he said, with the emergency HPA, the closure will be October 25th through November 15th.
So do we need to revise the action this afternoon, Marcus?
I believe the way the resolution was written is that the county engineer could set the dates and that those dates would fall in between the 23rd and the 30th of November.
Okay, so, okay, that's the, okay, thank you.
So as I mentioned, we are working down a parallel path, certainly doing the emergency interim repair starting next week. At the same time, we are working toward replacing that structure with a fish-friendly structure, which will help us rebuild the public road and keep that critical link between the neighborhoods and also emergency access. When we do replace that existing structure, it will be with a fish-friendly passage of the stream. So it will meet all the fish and wildlife requirements to make sure we restore fish access. There's some very high quality stream habitat, wetlands upstream of Country Club Road. When it's constructed, the road itself and the culvert the road itself will meet the current stormwater standards, which will again help protect water quality in Green Cove Creek. And certainly this is a high priority project. While the alternative analysis has not begun yet, we do expect the construction cost to be very high due to the challenging site, which includes a very steep ravine, wetlands, and a very high road embankment. Next slide, please.
I have a question on that, Scott. On your
Yeah.
high cost. So when you say high cost, is there any emergency money out there, or I don't know, because it's a fish passage, we can get something that doesn't deplete our road fund?
Yeah, great question. And to be honest with you, this is such an emerging issue right now. We have not started that process to look for that money, but rest assured, we will be looking under every stone we can to find any funding that we could have available, whether it's emergency funding or funding from the state or anywhere. When this came up, it was just about, it was the same week as the TIP public hearing. So initially we're trying to get the emergency repair done while we start work toward the final replacement of the structure. But yeah, I hear you, and we will be definitely looking for any other funding we can find for sure.
And just follow up on that. You're concerned that this, what did you say it was, a 5-foot culvert?
Yes, it's a 5-foot diameter culvert.
You're concerned that it can collapse and then we'd have a real mess? Is that what you're worried about?
Exactly, and trying to predict exactly when that would happen, it would be an educated guess at best. In the last 12 months, it's collapsed about a foot. We don't know if that foot collapse happened in the last 2 months or gradually over the last 12 months. Were we to wait until next summer, there'd be a lot of sleepless nights, at least for me, and I think a lot of our other public works folks hoping that thing would last all summer or all winter, excuse me.
I know you've got some folks coming from the state, that are going to bring some expertise, I guess, but is there any shoring up of a 1-inch steel plate or 2-inch plate that could be shoved in there just straight up and down that would prevent that for a while or help you to less likely have it collapse more?
Yeah, interesting question. And couple concerns would come up with that. We don't want to send crews inside of the culvert because we're not sure how long the culvert will last. And again, it could last another month. It could last another 8 months. We really don't know. But were we to try to really jack up the top of the culvert, the bottom of the culvert, we're concerned is not a condition that would be strong enough to support that pressure pushing down while you push up on the top of the culvert.
Okay.
We might end up creating a hole in the bottom of the culvert as well.
Okay, just wondered. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sounds
great
like a
question.
dilemma.
So next steps on our long-term replacement of the project, we are working to add the project to the draft 2022 to 2027 CIP and the TIP. The project, you may recall, is in the current TIP, so the 2021 to 2026 TIP. When it was put in that the current document, it was fully vetted and reviewed by the commissioners, and the public had an opportunity to review and comment on that before the adoption of the current tip, again, the 21 to 26 tip. As you're aware, the public hearing for the tip was held September 28th. And as we move into the final months of the year and work toward adoption of the 2022 to 27 tip, we'll be adding the project back in, which would allow us the ability to continue to work on the project toward the full replacement. But it's the same project that's in the current tip. And I should add, the reason that we took it out of the tip initially, we did not expect to begin work on this project for several years, as we had been looking for money and applying for money through different grant programs, and we were not successful. We did not believe that going forward with advancing it as a fish passage project, we would have success in the near future getting funding for it. So thus it was dropped in the draft 2022 to 2027 tip. But again, as we work toward adding it, it is the exact same project, except now it's really being driven by structural concerns of the road itself. One of the things I'd like to add as we work toward full replacement, the first step, other than getting it added to the CIP and the TIP, will be working toward performing an alternative analysis to really help us figure out what the best and most cost-effective means to replace the structure is. At this point, it's really too early to hazard a guess on what that might be, but we do suspect it will be fairly expensive. And this really provided us a fantastic opportunity to use our on-call consultants, which helped speed up the process of this by probably 1 or 2 months at least. Within about 2 weeks of having really scoped out what the issue was, we had our consultants out there. They're really experts in this field, and they're putting together a proposal right now, which we expect to get the scope of work by next week. We'll begin work on that alternative analysis maybe probably next month in November already. Again, saving us probably a month or two by using the on-call roster. As we look forward toward working on the design, the permitting is going to be fairly lengthy on this, and the complexity of the project itself, we do suspect that we will be in construction by 2024. And as I mentioned, and as Commissioner Edwards pointed out, we will definitely actively be seeking out any grants or any additional funding we can to help support this project. And I do have on the call right now, Marcus Storvik and Nick Bemis. Nick is our road operations manager that will be working on the interim repair, and Marcus will be working with us on the long-term replacement. And we are wide open and available for any questions that you might have.
I don't have any more questions.
Got it covered? Commissioner Mejia?
No, no further questions.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Let's move to item 9.3, ARPA funds broadband project.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is a follow-up to the presentation that you received from the Nisqually tribe related to the partnerships that we're working with them to start expanding broadband services to the rural areas of mainly of Thurston County, those areas that do not have broadband at this point. So I don't want to revisit the information that was provided to you. There was a good article in the Olympian, I believe today, related to this particular project. The request that I have for you, and I have attached the latest report related to the ARPA funds that you have been working on. And I could probably draw your attention to page number 2. That is item 5.17 on top of the page. You made some preliminary decisions to set aside $5 million to provide broadband to rural areas of Thurston County. My request for you is to consider moving $500,000 from the under consideration to the approved category, so we can actively start working within this quality tribe, particularly related to the survey they will need to do to start having a good understanding as to how many members of the public within the rural areas of Thurston County are in need of broadband. So my request is for you to consider moving from the under consideration amount from 500,000 to the approved amount. And I have Jenica Machado also here to answer any questions.
I guess you're saying move 500,000 from the 5 million.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That was,
Commissioner Mejia?
Well, I don't have any comments on the amount per se. I understand the need for it. I did see that an article came out in the Olympian about our briefing last week. And also I know the PUD is also doing a broadband survey. And funny enough, on the comments, they're all really relating to the Little Rock, Rochester area. So I was very happy that we are being very proactive on that sense, because a lot of the people that were commenting were just saying how awful the service was in that specific area that we're concentrating on right now. So I think it's a good thing that we're doing here.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I think it's a follow-up to the question the Commissioner Edwards had last week, whether we're engaged in the Port of Olympia and other on this effort. And in fact, just this morning I signed a MOU with that includes the EDC, the Port of Olympia, PUD, and Culvert Tribe of Thurston County to start working more of on a team approach. And Jenica can elaborate more in that MOU, but just this morning I signed that.
Good.
So I think it's a move afoot to have this very comprehensive. I totally agree with Commissioner Mejia. There is some areas that are in need to get access. And I think this is an excellent project and an excellent opportunity to partner with with this Culvert Tribe at this point particularly. Jenica, anything to add?
No additional information apart from what you have shared, Romero. I think that this 500,000 will be able to provide the surveying for residential and small business communities in Thurston County. The Nisqually Tribe has spoken with Thurston PUD to ensure that the survey is keeping in mind the survey scope of the Thurston PUD as well.
I guess I have maybe just a follow-up. I know the state of Washington has a guru person that's doing this now. I can't tell you his name, but he's trying to do this coordination statewide. So are we including that group? I mean, I don't know him. He's a new guy, but apparently he's heading this up and he's done it.
Are you thinking Russ Elliott?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the name. Are we coordinating with him and trying to get any involvement there that we can as well?
So I believe Russ Elliott is with the Washington State Broadband Office. Yeah. And we had a meeting, I believe Romero attended for a portion of it with the Nisqually Tribe and the Washington State Broadband Office. And the pre-application that went in yesterday is to that office for that $6.7 million grant.
Okay, good. Wondering where we're at. Thank you.
So I didn't quite get what the PUD is doing and how what this money is going to do is going to overlap that or be complementary to that. What's going on there with the PUDs doing a study of the same thing? Can somebody answer that?
The Thurston PUD has a survey out right now, and they are focusing on anchor institutions and businesses to help distribute their survey. And so the Nisqually Tribe has spoken to the Thurston PUD, and their survey is focusing, the Nisqually survey is focusing on residential and small businesses, and will coordinate that data.
What's the PUD survey doing?
They have the survey going out through anchor institutions and schools and whatnot, but it is primarily online. And so the Nisqually Tribe's survey will be door to door.
So Ramiro, you need 3 thumbs up or what?
Yeah, I would like, if your concurrence and my proposal to move 500,000 out of the 5 million to the approved category, so we can start working on the agreement to utilize this money.
I see 3 thumbs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. Let's move to item 9.4, joint resolution with the Port of Olympia, 5 commissioner districts.
This is a follow-up to the early conversation maybe a couple of months ago that you had with the Port of Olympia Commission. And this is related to their initiative at that point that they would like to, they wanted at that point move forward with putting a ballot measure this November in front of the voters, for the voters to consider expanding the Port of Olympia Commission from 3 members to 5 members. Was a lot of conversations between the 2 commissions, and the agreement that at the end of that meeting, they were probably going to be doing a joint resolution. They, at least to try to coordinate any potential request to the voters to consider moving from 3 to 5 commissioners, not only for the Port of Olympia, but also for the Board of County Commissioners. There's a little bit of a caveat on this whole process, as you may relate. The Port of Olympia can go right now, regardless. But the Board of County Commissioners, we need to wait for a 300,000 population threshold. And that is the reason as to why this particular resolution came to the part of the conversation. We received the population as a result of the 2020 census. The Thurston County is 294,750. So we're probably, shy of less than 6,000 to reach 300,000. I myself feel optimistic by the next April, when the state released the new numbers of Thurston County will be reaching 300,000. And this particular joint resolution speaks about that. It's pretty simple. If for any event by the May 2nd, 2022, if the county doesn't reach the 300,000, then the Port of Olympia can exercise their own legislative option to move forward on their own. So I'd just like to bring you this to your attention. We're working on the details. I provided you with a copy this morning. If you have any comments related to this particular resolution, please let me know. And at some point, I will be coordinating with the Executive Director of the Port of Olympia to see if we can coincide as to when you might consider taking an action on this joint resolution. Any questions?
I have a bit of one.
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
I don't have any questions on the resolution. I read that and that looks good to me. But hasn't the history been that we're going up about 5,000 a year?
Actually, close to 6.
Yeah, anyway, so
I think
we're almost going to be there by December, probably.
Probably. So if it's not for the county,
If we're not already there.
Next year.
And so by May, as long as we're there, we get to put it on the ballot. That's
Yes,
what
sir.
you're saying, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So also we'll make sure that there's a lot of steps that the board needs to take in order to put any ballot measure from the voters. We are going to try to do all the background work, assuming that perhaps we're going to be reaching 300,000 for you to consider taking actions. So we're not going to be waiting and then rushing it into a legislative action that perhaps may not be prudent at that time.
And in November of 22, what's the percentage of vote that needs to come?
There's a simple majority.
So I do think that it would behoove us and the Port of Olympia to start working on educating the public sooner rather than later, so we're not in a big rush, because I think we're going to be at the threshold, and we should be letting the public know why we're doing this at every chance that we get.
Yes.
It's not gonna be easy. I know a lot of people think, well, it's just, but it's not gonna be real easy. So it's gonna be crucial that we develop that trust. You've all heard me talk about that before.
Yes, sir. And one additional item this resolution includes is the collaboration between the Port of Olympia, Thurston County, and the county auditor. If in fact this moves forward and approved by the voters, they will have a collaborative coordination as to how those potential 5 new districts should be redrawn. So that is also stated on your resolution.
Hopefully we'll get over this COVID and be able to go to Rotary meetings and chamber meetings and stuff. Present our point
I'm
of
with you
view.
on that one, Commissioner.
Okay.
Ramiro, is this your draft or the port's draft, or has there been already collaboration on the elements of this resolution?
It's the latter, it's the collaboration, that's what you see today.
Okay. And I'd agree with Commissioner Edwards about the conversation, and I think that's part of what this resolution is designed to do, is get that conversation started, and we should use the passing of this I'd like to get this done as soon as possible and then use that to get that conversation started. And the other thing is, you said something about, I didn't quite catch what you said about rushing into a legislative act. I want to have all of the pieces. I actually think the opposite. I mean, the purpose of doing this resolution is so that we can start to put all the pieces in place, so that when we have that firm number, we can quote unquote rush the legislative act, but it won't be rushing because we've been starting it right now, preparing for what we're going to plan to do as soon as we have that official number. Because I don't want to be, as Commissioner Edwards said, squeezed at the last minute, scrambling around, getting the legislative pieces. Because I can almost guarantee you that certain people in the county who will remain nameless will say that this is illegal and we can't do it, or something about the steps that we're going to take to put it on the ballot are not legal. That seems to come up every single time we try to do anything related to anything like this. So I want to have all those things sorted through so that we're not scrambling around next summer worried about the legality of the ballot proposition.
Yes, and thank you. And with very eloquently, as you described, that was the intent of my comment.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear the mic was a little, you turned toward Commissioner Edwards. I didn't completely grab what, sorry about that, Ramiro.
Thank you, sir.
Perfect. Okay, well, let's go to, are we good? I'm sorry, Commissioner Mejia, did you have anything?
No, I think it looks good.
Okay.
I'm ready for it.
Okay, then we'll go to item 5, public testimony. Something.
You have received a lot of emails and from Mr. Pettit, asking a lot of questions. At this point, the county will not be responding to those questions since he has already threatened legal action against the county as well as against the sitting commissioners. So it will not be respond to his questions at this point.
Okay, then I guess we can go to Commissioner. We're at 11:32 and we have time for Commissioner items number 6. Commissioner Mejia, anything you wanted to bring to the board?
I did not have anything ready. This is the first time in a while that we've ended on time, so.
The mythical Commissioner items segment of the board meeting. Commissioner Edwards.
Yes. Where are we at on the veterans issues? And apparently we've had a couple resignations. Where's Mark at towards massaging that and getting everything all figured out?
On November 2nd, you will have as an agenda item for you to consider a pilot project. And at that point, Mark will provide you with additional information as to the status of that.
Okay. Can I keep going, sir, or do you want to jump back? You want to go back and forth, or?
Go ahead and do another one.
And where are we at on Mary Hall's concern about handicap access? Apparently, while it's okay to, I don't know, delay until you update, but in some cases, it sounds like from her letter that we're obligated to do something in all places of, where there's voting taking place.
Can I respond to that? Because I spoke with her recently
good.
about it.
Okay.
And I spoke with her on Sunday, and she said she was going to schedule either a work session or an AIS in the agenda to kind of get some information from other auditors around the state who have done this, as well as someone from the governor's office. So I'm sure she'll be coordinating with Ramiro and Robin to get something on our calendar. Ramiro, I'm not sure if you want to add something else to that.
You know, I have provided my perspective related to the 88 requirements on county facilities, including buildings and as well as older roadways. And as I've provided to you in the past, my understanding, this has been a long issue, not just in Thurston County, where every jurisdiction and every local jurisdiction across the state related to the requirements of the Department of Justice as to how we need to make an inventory of all the 88 deficiencies and develop a transition plan. And the transition plan is intended to start addressing those deficiencies as we move along and start updating and upgrading all the facilities that we have in place. I am not familiar with the requirement, the Auditor Hall stated in her email, the loading centers are different, so I will not be able to answer that question today. I'm not familiar with that requirement.
Okay.
So there's no problem though with us having this presentation that the auditor is proposing?
If the auditor can request a presentation to the board anytime the auditor wants.
Yep, that's what I thought. So we'll have more information
I
about
will
that.
not, I will not be serving the gate of keeper of that.
Okay.
Well, it sounds like all the board wanted to see that presentation, so hopefully we get that scheduled.
Yes.
Am I correct in that, commissioners?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me throw a commissioner item out there. I received something in the mail regarding long-term disability plans, and that it sounds like something different than the long-term care legislation. It sounds like something else that is going to be deducted from our pay as public employees if we don't go on the website and well, I mean, if we want to decline it, we have to make the affirmative choice to decline this, or else the deductions will be increased. And I'm just wondering if, first, I ever heard about it. I'm wondering if anyone else has heard about it, and whether we should have human resources alerting employees to this, because my wife and Thomasina both said that they looked at it and tossed it into the recycling. It doesn't jump out as like something that's really, really important that you'd want to look at, but I think what I can tell it is. So I'm just wondering if anyone else knows any more about this and whether we should be giving our employees a red flag.
I was probably one of those who probably tossed that piece of documentation,
Yeah.
so I'm not familiar.
I know what you're talking about, but I too
like
don't
this.
have enough information, so I think that would be great to have Maria give us
Yeah,
an
absolutely.
update.
I can probably get a copy from you, Commissioner, and send it to Maria for her to further explore this. I am not familiar with what you say.
Your ability to opt out cleanly is within the November open enrollment period. So people need to be doing this in November and therefore learning about it now. And then you can do it afterwards, but it's a little more complicated after that. So people need to be educated about this, sounds like, in the next 2 weeks, if they're gonna make the informed decision about whether they want additional long-term disability plan enhancement and pay for that. Okay, great. Back to you, Commissioner Edwards.
Okay. Where are we at on the issue that a citizen brought in about the Old Dominion trucking, I think, down at Maytown? That was brought in by a citizen that had some concerns Well, and I believe that citizen, I can't tell you his name right off the top of my head, but he's from maybe the Audubon Society.
Yeah.
Sam Merrill, I think it was.
Yeah, I believe that was last week's
Okay,
testimony.
I'm just curious, are we
Yeah.
looking into what
So-
his allegations or
So
complaints were?
The Old Dominion is a different path, it's a different process. What his suggestion last week was for you to consider the process of how the SEPA process works in the county.
I thought he was specifically talking about Old Dominion.
Yeah, as an example, but that particular development has moved forward through the process. I can probably give you additional detailed information,
Well,
but nothing.
okay. No,
I can tell you,
that's
I mean,
okay.
I was contacted by citizens some time ago, and what I learned was that something was done, some storage tanks of I don't know, oil or some kind of hazardous material was put in after the fact. It wasn't part of the proposal that was permitted. So then our staff was trying to work with the Old Dominion to try to get them permitted. And there's a SEPA process that's triggered. And the environmental groups that might have been worried about that in the front end, if they'd known about it, had like very short amount of time. I want to say 2 weeks. And they're trying to like meet with their boards to decide if they need to hire an attorney to do an analysis and get involved. And their argument was that 2 weeks is just a completely unreasonably short amount of time for, say, a nonprofit group to react to something that's potentially hazardous to environment, that they might want to hire counsel or a consultant and weigh in on. That just can't all occur in 2 weeks. So they're particularly upset about why we were doing an after the fact permitting on this to begin with, and whether there was any hiding of the original scope of the project in the front end. But then secondarily, they were advocating for a tweak to our SEPA processes to allow a longer period of time, 30 days, not 14 days, so that they could actually, so they could get together and actually meet and discuss and analyze and actually be able to weigh in a meaningful way on something that's big. And 14 days that nobody even knew about. And then boom, to them, it seemed like an unreasonably short amount of time. They asked us to reconsider our SEPA processes. And so that's, I think what Mr. Merrill was trying to suggest.
Yeah, that's my understanding is for to consider changes on the process for SEPA review.
Okay. And another topic that we were working on, and that was that letter to the Scenic Shores people. Did we finally get that put together and sent out to them?
Not
So
yet. I have not had the chance to send that letter.
okay, but that's yet to come.
It's coming,
right?
Yeah, I need
Okay.
to work with Brett.
Okay, go ahead, sir. I got a couple more I guess I can ask about.
Go ahead. I think that was it for me, was the long-term disability thing.
The fair parking lot, where are we at on the wrap on the parking lot? That's
We are
been a concern.
working with the city of Lacey to, as I reported to the board, we've received a notice of violation from the city. So we're working with the city of Lacey first to determine what is the outcome and the solution to that before we respond formally to Mr. Carmen.
Well, I think there's others besides Mr. Carmen, it sounds like. I think he might be the point of contact. I don't know that for sure. but
Mr. Casino was also commenting on that last week. So when we get a resolution on the notice of violation, whatever that resolution is, we will be responding to both, at least they both will have received testimony on Mr. Carmen and Mr. Casino.
So more to come, I guess.
There's more to come.
Topic, yeah.
Because we, at this point, we need to understand what the gist of the city of Lacey's notice of violation, and then what will be the remedy the county needs to do to resolve the violation.
Okay. I have one more, sir, if you.
No, that's good. I had the same question about that one, so I appreciate that. Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
I've got a citizen that helps me with Nisqually River activities, I guess. Mr. Glassetter watches that pretty close for me. And as we move forward on watching what goes on with the river and specifically the I-5 issue with, you know, I know the military is worried about that bridge process and DOT on how we're gonna handle that. It's gonna be a pretty expensive proposition as time goes on. And I don't know the time frame exactly about when that's gonna be solved, but Mr. Glassetter has brought to my attention the fact that Tacoma Power in the regulatory process of, which they say they have no need to be concerned about flood control as part of their licensing agreement. I think it's a pretty big issue if they mismanage the high water behind the dam and we end up with another 96 flood that was a big issue because there was mismanagement of the water level there, in which they tried to, it seems like on several occasions, they try to keep the water level as high as they possibly can so they can generate power, because that's what they're all about. So I wonder if it isn't worth us at least getting involved with PERC and possibly sending them a letter asking for some review of the flood control issue when it comes to licensing. Now I know they've already reissued the license, but there's always an appeal process. And especially if we can point out that there is a real threat to commerce and the military and our concern and the tribe's concern about that continued erosion on that big S-turn underneath the bridge. And that's the kind of thing that causes those big erosion issues to take place, is when you have a flood. So I'd like to have the board be more in tune with that, and maybe Kurt could help us with that to see if we are missing the boat on a potential, because it's real easy for after the fact to discuss it. No, we should have done this or we should have done that. But not only is it a hazard to the community down there from the flooding standpoint, but it's a big issue when it comes to washing out that bridge. And it'll only take the right flood to make it happen. And then we're gonna be sitting there with egg on our face saying, well, we should have put a little more effort into this or that. So I don't know if my seatmates are even aware of the issue that I'm talking about, or maybe the county manager is, I suppose. But we've been working on it with the military for years.
I'm well familiar with the issue that you're discussing, Commissioner.
But I don't know if, as my seatmates are, that's all.
No,
And I don't ever get to talk.
You know, and what I said is, 'tis the season. And this is the right, you know, the season every year comes back, and there's absolutely concerns as to how Tacoma Water manages the dam. So over the last 2-3 years, and in fact 2 years ago, the board sent a letter to Tacoma Power asking them to manage and be considerate to when they release the flood levels behind the dam downstream. And I think you alluded to the fact the purpose of this dam operated by Tacoma Power is power generator, and it's not flood control dam. And that is fundamentally different in terms of how they're being permitted. But certainly there should be an understanding of how their actions have a downstream effect to county citizens. Kurt has been in contact with the citizen that you mentioned and the coordination, and Kurt's also in contact with Tacoma Power just to make sure that we are aware of that. But I think what you're requesting is a little bit different than that has not been requested in the past. is meaning we can probably send a letter to the federal government to change the conditions of their permit. That includes flood control. Is that?
Well, yes, but specifically because of the issue involving I-5 and all the multi-jurisdictions that are affected by the potential loss of that bridge.
Yeah, so
that's kind of what the focus is.
Yeah, so the Nisqually tribe is actively involved on this project. So, and this is, it was born from the need to do improvements along I-5, from Nisqually all the way to south of Tacoma. And the Nisqually Bridge is what we call is the pinch point, right? Not just the pinch point in terms of the number of lanes that crosses the river, but also the pinch point from the hydrological point of view. I think what you have seen is the migration over the decades of the Nisqually River. Actually is making a bend, and if the bend continues, it will be affecting the embankment of I-5, and when that is affected, then I-5 will be shut down.
Yeah.
The Nisqually tribe just finished an environmental and hydrologic study. They determined that date is probably near 2040 or thereabouts,
If we don't have any adverse situations.
So if it may seem to be there is enough time, but also it's how we're going to be finding the necessary money to replace this bridge, because the solution of this is to elevate most of the delta with an elevated structure. We have asked DOT, and in fact, as part of your legislative agenda, when you review this item, that was key for you to support to ask additional funding to continue the design of the replacement of the Nisqually River Bridge. But also we need to engage the federal delegation, and in fact we had engaged them early in the year to have somewhat of an appropriation earmark to start fixing the bridge. So long-term and short-term in combination with Tacoma Power is a very complex issue. And that's what I know about this whole process.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with anything you've said. Everything is hinged on the river flowing normally between now and 2040. I mean, as far as eroding underneath there.
Yeah.
If we have a major flood situation like we had in 1996, it might only take that one situation to exacerbate the problem to the point that I-5 now becomes a real problem. And I think by preventive maintenance, if you will, with Tacoma Power, even though we've sent them a letter, they still, that the water level oftentimes is pretty high, and they don't seem to make the release properly. And they have a reason for doing that. They're trying to create power as much as they can possibly create. And that's good. I'm not faulting that. I'm just saying if we don't get something in place that is a little bit more of a hammer than saying, please be aware. I don't know what that hammer is, but
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the difficult.
something more than just please.
Because
And
funding the hammer from the county's perspective.
well,
is
yeah, I mean, the state's at risk, our defense system is at risk, a lot of folks at risk. I think somebody needs to kind of be the catalyst to bring that together and get the Department of Defense and the Department of Transportation to work with us on trying not to have this major catastrophe like we had in 1996. That's what I'm asking. Got a brand new commissioner, maybe never heard of it. I don't ever get a chance to talk to
And
her,
I think
so.
the catalyst is the Nisqually tribe. And they're absolutely engaged and involved to make this project a reality.
I'm not doubting that.
And-
I think
and-
we should be working with them even more and bring all these players together as much as we can and see if we can't prevent a 1996 disaster. That's what I'm looking to do.
My inclination, Ramiro just kind of hit on it. I've been just listening, but my inclination would be to follow the tribe's lead, because back when we were worried about the management during the flood, we got input that they were pretty comfortable with the relationship they had and what was done. And that's why I wasn't as supportive maybe as you were to taking a stronger action. But they're absolutely in the lead on this whole project about the Nisqually River and the bridge. So if they see a connection there and we could partner with them, I would be very, amenable to that approach. Because like I say, they were affected by the flooding back in, whatever it was 2 years ago, where we got that emergency declaration, and they're very concerned about the river and the bridge. So the connections there and how they interact, I would imagine that they would be right on top of that, and I'd be willing to support them in any regard in terms of an approach with FERC or whatever.
Okay, I guess I just want to expand on that. I agree with you. They're very concerned. But I don't think their concern matches what the Department of Defense's concern would be if that bridge went out, or the Department of Transportation, both at the federal level and the state level, and the potential damage it could do to our residents. So yes, I agree they're concerned, but I think somebody needs to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and let FERC know that this is a big issue, that should something go wrong, I mean, it's a major issue. It's, I can't emphasize that enough. So that's why I'm trying to get support from my seatmates.
Here's my problem though, was like the technical stuff was, and I'm racking my brain I had actually a pile of paper about this on my desk for like a year and a half or 2 years, and I finally took it off my desk because it just hasn't come back up. But it got very, very technical in terms of, if they're doing something wrong, then we want to address that. We always want to make things right. But there was a real debate that we were going back and round about their policies and whether they were doing something quote unquote wrong. And in fact, the Nisqually tribe, if I remember right, I had David Trout's email, I think, on my desk for literally 2 years, was that they didn't think anything was done wrong in that situation. And so I guess the question is, before I'm going to start trying to tell somebody what they ought to be doing, I need to be really convinced that they're doing something wrong. So maybe we need to just go back to the beginning. If that's where we're going, I'm going to need to go back to the beginning, get a tutorial on flood management and dam control so that I can feel confident that what I'm saying is valid. Because right now, I didn't walk away from that whole situation in 2019 with confidence that they had mismanaged something, especially when the tribe was saying that they hadn't. So that's kind of where my problem is. I'm willing, once I'm convinced, then I'm willing to go right there with you hand in hand, Commissioner, but it was just not as clear as you seem to be implying.
I see the county manager's got his hand up.
Maybe Kurt has been involved in this for the last 2 years. Maybe I can talk with them to see if we can bring a briefing related to the operations of Tacoma Power. And also, as a matter of clarification, when the Nisqually tribe embarked on this project to see the hydrological analysis on the impacts of the bridge of the river on the I-5, it was including I-5, it was including the Department of Transportation and the Department of Defense. And they utilized money they received from federal and state levels. This is a regional study that we conducted within the Nisqually tribe. Thurston County and all the jurisdictions, including DOT and DOJ, have been supportive of this effort. And we'll continue to coordinate with the Nisqually tribe as to the next steps. And that is why my suggestion for you to have on your legislative agenda this project, because it is important. The shared legislative agenda, which includes all the jurisdictions in Thurston County, is also part of the legislative agenda. On the South-South Military Community Partnership Program, that is related to the Department of Defense purely. This is part of the legislative agenda, so this is a high priority. And that will continue to be a high priority until we can get funding to replace this bridge.
If Commissioner Edwards, if your point is that this is new information, like the vulnerability of the bridge is a new piece of information that maybe should be relevant to how they manage their dam, I agree with that. Seems like a valid point, and we can certainly make that point. But I don't have the technical knowledge to know how that new information should change their practices. And that's the missing piece for me. But I think you're onto something. You're onto something to say that, yeah, we've got new information that we didn't have a couple years ago, and there may be a greater need to change the management strategy than there was. There's a stronger argument now than there was a couple years ago.
Okay, that's kind of where I'm at, and
Yeah.
You're right. The tribe was not complaining about how Tacoma Power handled that flood situation, or even recently, because they want to maintain the best relationship they can, and they know that going up against FERC is a major process, and they don't want to be at loggerheads with Tacoma Power because of the fish issue and getting water released at the right time and keeping the fish population correct. So they don't want to stir that up either. I understand that. But the tribe, well, other than they don't want to cause a rift with Tacoma Power, I'm not too worried about that. So I'm taking a little different approach, because I do think that it's very crucial what Tacoma Power does, and it's been recognized. They haven't done anything wrong per se. They've followed along with all their licensing requirements, but they're right there on the verge. And we had the 96 issue, and then we had one a couple of years ago. And so basically, they're not doing anything wrong, and nobody's saying they are right now, but they are maintaining that high level of water behind the dam. And if they do that and get it wrong again, well, they haven't had enough of a release, that's where the potential problem is. And then they still haven't really done anything wrong if we flood out again. Because they're still working within the regulatory process of FERC. And FERC has said, well, flood control isn't the issue. Well, that agreement was made 75 years ago with FERC and has continued on all along. We didn't have I-5 there maybe when that was going. I think that was at about 58, that bridge maybe was put in there, something like that. And, once you've got something in place, it just kind of tends to stay in place until, oh, doggone it, the bridge washed out. We should have done something. All I'm saying is, let's pay attention to what that something is and prevent that from happening by, being a little more assertive. Department of Transportation at the federal and the state level, and the Department of Defense. Because it's going to be a big deal if it does wash out. And all I'm trying to do is prevent that from happening, and kind of bolstering maybe the regulatory position that FERC has chosen not to take, because it's one more aggravating thing to those folks in Washington, D.C. They're not out here, but if they get a letter from everybody saying, hey, let's pay attention to this, because it could be a problem, might not be a problem. But if we get one of those adverse, we're talking about climate change and warming and more rain in certain areas and drought in other areas. Well, to me, it looks like we've got a potential that's coming our way. So I'm just trying to be preventative. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not mad at anybody. I want to get ahead of the problem if I can. I like to think that I like to play chess and make a few moves. You know, I'm not playing checkers on this deal, because checkers, you end up in a situation like, oh, doggone it, I shouldn't have made that move. But in chess, that's what I'm doing, I'm playing chess, so I would appreciate you're at least
Yeah.
indulging me.
Well, that would be a good topic for a Nisqually Council meeting, and I don't know if we have any of those coming up, but it would be great to kind of hear how they think we might be able to collaborate on some strategy.
Well, I can tell you, they don't want to ruffle any feathers at Tacoma Power.
Okay,
I know
well, maybe,
all the underlying things that go on there, and I can tell that's a big concern. Tacoma Power has been a good partner for those folks, whether it has to do with land acquisition or salmon enhancement. They're a good neighbor, but if things go wrong, we could say, oh, shucks, we should have done something. That's all I'm trying to prevent from happening.
So I will engage Kurt to revisit some of the, the information, and I'll ask him to come and give a brief to the board.
Okay, and I will say, Mr. Glassetter, you talk about somebody that understands all how they do business and when they release and when they don't, and the volumes
And Kurt has been in contact.
I'm hoping that but
has
Kurt's got his hands full on a lot of other things. And I'm gonna say my guy pays attention to this problem, and he knows the problem when he sees it. He's been there watching it for 50 years. And his heart's in the right place. So I think he ought to get a medal, but we're not in the business of medals, so. Okay, that was my issue, sir.
okay, it's 12:05. I think we're running out of time, so appreciate everybody, and we'll see you back at 2 p.m.